We had a client that we worked with, and she was really struggling with profitability. She kept raising tuition. She actually did 3 tuition increases within a 15-month cycle, and she still could not catch up. So I helped her work with our 6 money leaks in schools, and she only used 3 of the 6 money leaks and cut her expenses by 50%. 50. She did not fire anyone. She did not slash any of her programs, and she did not work more hours. Again, the 6 money leaks are not hacks or spreadsheets. These are patterns. They are small decisions that feel so normal that your school does, but they quietly drain your school's profit. So if you've ever wondered why you're working so hard, but still not seeing the return, this is your first step to clarity. Click the link in the show notes and find out what it's actually costing you. Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, where we have conversations about education, leadership, and building a school of excellence. The goal on this show is to bring you clarity, up-level your mindset, and give you practical strategies and inspiration so you can show up with confidence and trust your decision-making. I'm Chani Wilshansky. I'm a mom of 4 under 10, a former New Yorker, and been in the early childhood field my entire life. And I'm so grateful that you've joined me for this conversation. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today's an exciting interview. I interview a friend of mine, Daniel Bauer, who is the host and creator of the Better Leader, Better Schools podcast. And he's also the author of a new book that just came out, Mastermind, Unlocking Talent Within Every School Leader. A couple of years ago, I stumbled across Danny's work, and I actually was interviewed on his podcast twice. Very special treat to have him on our podcast, the Schools of Excellence show. In this interview with Danny, we talk about the secret behind limitless leadership impact. We also talk about some stats around how many school leaders actually have ongoing training, coaches, and mentors to support them through their leadership journey. We talk a lot about what professional development looks like, what are some of the challenges of being lonely and that concept of leadership at the top. We talk about isolation. Danny has a very interesting concept where he talks about inauthenticity, authenticity, isolation to belonging, missed opportunity to challenges. We talk so much about what stops leaders from evolving and how to really change the narrative around what our country values and what the educational world as a whole will continue to value in the next generation. This is a deep conversation where I asked Danny some really hard questions, and we really unpack so much of what it takes to build and sustain a school of excellence. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Daniel. One of the things that are really interesting is when I first was searching in podcasts for school leadership and just in general, the concept of leadership, Daniel's podcast was one of the first things that rolled up on my iTunes. And this is going back, I want to say 4 years was when the first time I connected with you. And I was like, hey, you have this podcast, Better Leaders, Better Schools. And we kind of started this relationship. And I was on Daniel's show a few times, and I interviewed Daniel on my YouTube channel. And so this is really exciting to be connecting here again, especially with an exciting milestone in your professional career with the launching of a book. So congratulations and welcome to the show, Danny.
Yeah, Hani, thank you so much for having me. We have connected years ago. Can you believe, like, you blink your eyes and 4 years have disappeared, right? It's like unbelievable. And actually recently in September, BLBS, we celebrated our 6-year anniversary. The same type of thing. Like, I feel like I just am getting started, but 6 years is actually nothing to sneeze at either. So anyway, it's been wonderful meeting amazing leaders like yourself, and it's an honor to be here with you on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, we just celebrated episode 50. So we're in our very infancy stages here in the podcast. So I want to get started with, I interview a lot of different people on a show, and our podcast is Schools of Excellence.
Yeah.
And the people that listen to the show, the people that tune in, are really in the pursuit of excellence in all areas of their life, but particularly excellence in building incredible schools that is driven by people, that is driven by personal and self-leadership. And so I want to ask you, Danny, what got you excited or more curious and intrigued with diving into this particular sector of education and school leadership.
Yeah. It was scratching my own itch, honestly, right? I don't know why you started the podcast. Feel free to share, but for me, I was missing out. But I've always been hungry. I've always been curious. I've always been a learner. And what I found, my lived experience in school leadership and then in the district level gatherings, right? Like here was a leadership meeting, raise student achievement, and all this stuff is important. Raise student achievement, increase attendance, decrease discipline, or you're fired, right? Like, wow, how uninspiring. And I was interested, like, how do we create a meaningful 3-year vision that transfers ownership to the faculty, that it's like all hands on deck? I don't know about you. I struggle with difficult conversations, honestly. So it takes a lot of work to prepare and actually be in the moment, be present, handle those effectively. And then
Sure.
there's things like, dismantling oppressive system or inequitable systems that exist in school. I didn't know how to do that and nobody was talking about it. So speaking to amazing people like you on the show, like helped me level up. And as a result, people started asking me what to
Yeah.
do in certain situations. And that
Yeah.
was a pivot. It was an opportunity. Do I try to pursue this thing that I'm building at Better Leaders, Better Schools, which initially was a passion project for myself? Or do I try to scale it and serve more school leaders? Because I could always go back to school leadership, right? They
Sure.
need they need principals, they
Yeah.
need teachers.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I keep
Love
showing up, and like I said, 6 years later, right?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So let's dive into your book. Anytime someone writes a book and really births it into the world, there's
Mm.
so much vulnerability that comes with taking your personal thoughts, your IP, just all the stuff that you have, and putting it on paper and saying, here, you read this, right? And you're really putting yourself out there. So before we dive into the contents of the book and just all the gold that's in there, I'd love to just speak to a little bit of what it means to be a new author and putting out into the world what you find really beautiful and transformational for leaders.
It's two sides of the same coin. So part of it is like thrilling and you're
Yeah,
excited and wow, what
yeah,
might the impact be? And then the
yeah,
other side is like so afraid that two people will read it, and of the two people that read it, they both think it sucks.
yeah,
That's what it's like to put your heart
yeah.
out there. Here's the thing is like I think something that separates leaders like you and me is we actually do it, you know?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people that sit on the sidelines, or Brene Brown talks about being in the arena. So I would much rather have to manage those emotions and put myself out there than sit on the sidelines and not try to make a dent in school leadership.
Well, I think this is such a perfect segment into what this book is about. Stepping into the arena and being a school leader is having those
Mm,
difficult conversations, is being afraid and still being brave at the exact same moment, right? That paradox. So the book is called Unlocking Talent Within Every School Leader. And you talk a lot about limitless leadership impact. And I love this kind of, alliteration when it comes to that. But tell us your definition of what it means limitless leadership impact.
I like the why and the what if type of questions,
Okay.
and what would need to be true for this X, this amazing thing to happen.
Mm,
And what I've learned so often is that we become, as a the founder of a company or as a school leader, you're actually the greatest opportunity and the greatest bottleneck at the same time. And I love playing with these tensions if you can't tell. Anyway, to me, it's about dreaming big and then trying to figure out what would need to be true for this amazing thing to happen. What I learned, years ago, because the book, is about this mastermind structure, which we both serve school leaders in.
mhm,
And it's a winning formula, right? Isolation is the number one enemy of excellence. And the quote that got me to join a mastermind, right? I didn't just facilitate them, I've been a part of one since 2015, the same one. I joined two others this year specifically. But the thing I want to say is Jim Rohn, motivational speaker, said you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That was a mirror moment. That
mm.
basically ruined my life, honestly.
You're like,
You
goodbye,
know, uh,
everyone I spend time with.
yeah, right. Because I remember, writing down my dreams in a journal. Like, here's what I think is possible, and showing it to my closest friends and even family at the time. They were like, it's not going to work, Danny. What? How demotivating. And I heard that quote and I said, okay, how do I surround myself with people who say, okay, what would need to be true for this amazing dream to happen? And that's what we do with school leaders, right? So we get the right people in the room, have these brave and courageous conversations, and then figure out how to make it a reality.
I love the way you kind of always pull like the two sides to the same coin, right? We're creating this resistance or this rubber band. And what's beautiful about that is I think that's an important skill in leadership where we get comfortable with the ambiguity of each moment, right? Where it's not this cut and dry or crystal clear all the time. There's so much of like this
Mm.
and what if and this or this and that. And people want like, okay, here's step one, two, three, four, and then you'll get this result. But as you move into leadership, it's just not like that. It depends, it's
Yeah.
contextual. So, one of the things you dive into in the book is the big problems with professional development, problems with, when leaders are seeking to go to a conference or go to a training or just start to, fill their knowledge gaps. And one of the things which you just said, isolation, right? People feel really isolated. They feel like they're all alone. It's lonely at the top. What are some of the other problems with the traditional professional development that exists out there for leaders?
Right. That's a great question. And, if you look at the lived experience, I mentioned here's a guy who wants to do more for a school community. And it wasn't like I was quiet about how I wanted to grow, but those opportunities didn't exist. So then you become two paths. Are you going to
Mm.
throw yourself a pity party for the school administrator that has it the worst in the world? Or are you going to take ownership? I think most people throw the pity party, right? And then tell
Why is
people
that?
about it. Yeah.
Why do people choose that option?
Because when you tell people how bad you got it and like, people sympathize, maybe they feel good. I don't know. I think when you take ownership of your own development, you're also on the hook, especially when you're talking about things in public, your goals, how you want to grow. That can be scary. So it's a lot easier to hide. It's a lot easier to throw sticks and stones at the system that's not developing you and blame that instead of taking radical ownership yourself. So I think that's some of it. But the other thing I want to just share real quick is just like in my research, this is wild, but NAESP and the Learning Policy did this in 2020, right? They
What did they
surveyed 407 elementary school principals, but just over a quarter had access to a coach and a mentor like us in the last 2 years, right? 32%. Okay. And so if you think about your doctor, your dentist, any professional that is, right, charged with keeping you healthy, making you better, and you found out that, you know, they're not regularly getting coached or developed and that kind of thing, would you still go to that medical professional? There's no way. But why do we
Yeah.
enroll our kids into schools where three-quarters of the school leaders don't do anything to develop themselves? That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
I want to talk more about this, and I want to loop back for a second to what you said before on the hook, because Seth Godin
Okay.
talks about this so much.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
think always, right? And one of the things that you said, something that made me think about something he said is, as kids, our school system trains us a lot to say, hey, is this going to be on the test? Do I need to know
Mhm.
this for the test? Is this on the test? And what they're really saying is, am I on the hook for this information?
Yeah.
Right? Or, can I just let it slip under the thing because I don't need to know it for the test? And
Right.
I think what's challenging a lot, specifically in school leadership, is we work through the traditional school system and then we go into being a teacher, administrator, or school leadership, but very rarely do we go out and get other training or other profession or whatever it is and realize, sometimes we're learning because we just want to make ourselves better, not because it's on the test. And there's such
Mm.
a wiring that needs to happen when we enter school leadership that you're learning because it has an impact and a ripple effect on all parts of your life, not just because you're being tested on
Yeah.
this or you're being scored on this. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of loop that in there. So going into, you know, the profession and wanting to know that our doctors, our dentists are constantly getting training. When we're looking at these research, when we're looking at these studies, how does the average person who's listening to this show, a school leader in a small town, and they're like, I want to change the narrative. I want the narrative to be that school leaders get professional development and parents should be pursuing and saying, which coach do you have, right? I'm paying you $50,000 in a private school for my child to go to your school. What is
Mm.
your training and development? How do we change the narrative for parents to start asking these questions? You're a school leader who wants tools, resources, and just plain strategies of how to really lead your school and build a school of excellence. Well, I created something called the School Leadership Toolkit, which has over 10 resources covering topics like parent teacher relationships, difficult conversation, teacher appreciation ideas, and time management, along with to do list management. Some of the things that you get in this school leadership toolkit is how to lead parent teacher conferences. This is a masterclass training and to show your staff so that they can lead conferences with ease. We have a parent partnership blueprint, which is the step by step formula for authentic parent relationships. I have a training on how to get your to do list done and how to create your calendar for one on one meetings with staff. I have tools on how to filter distractions so that you can make the best decisions and reflective questions to ask teachers for goal setting and performance reviews, along with so much more. This mini toolkit is actually just the thing that you need to kick off this amazing school year and give you the confidence and the ability to trust your decision making as you head into another amazing year. Go check it out, the link in the show notes, or go to hani.me/toolkit.
That's interesting. So, how to change the narrative?
Because that's not
I
the
f
narrative now.
Yeah. No, you're so
Not the
true.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that school leaders that sort of talk about their experience in public, and I
Mm,
think that's helpful. I would write my weekly newsletter as a school principal, and I would share quotes, books I'm reading, things that
I
I
love
was learning and coaching experiences. And so I was very transparent in that way. And I would do other things that were unorthodox too, in the sense that I would send business articles out to the community. What does it have to do with the middle school that the kids at? Well, I knew it was of service to the audience. It was in service to some of the business folks that were in the community. And so my point is not necessarily separating that personal and professional as much as you do, bringing people into your story because we're all
yeah,
characters, right?
yeah.
Like, what are your values? Who are your enemies? This kind of thing. As a school leader, people want to know that. And so telling your story of growth is important as well.
That's so much, Danny. I just recap here real quickly. So every single school leader has some way that they're communicating with parents, whether that's a weekly
Mhm.
or a monthly on your website, and just starting to add a small shift of here's what I'm reading, here's what I found interesting, here's what's going on. That you never know who's reading that will say, hey, let me click on what Susan is reading right now. So what a powerful way to have an impact through such a small action. I love that, Danny. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think part of the responsibility is ours too, right? So
Yes,
do we
yes.
tell the story like a case study through the lens of the leaders we support, right?
Mhm.
Because if we do that, more people that are just like them will join. So back to Seth, like people like us do things like this. I think it's part of our responsibility to say, like,
Absolutely.
this is what we're about, putting the flag right in the sand and attracting those leaders. And there'll be a ripple effect the more people like us doing the work.
Well, I agree with that, and I also feel like, I tell this to the leaders all the time in our masterminds, like, get on television, get in the media. Like, right now, the media story is sports, women, food, this, like, that's what our society, like, values and
Mm,
puts on a pedestal, and it's like, what if education became more of a conversation? What if leadership became more of a conversation? And it takes a lot to shift the tide. That's just look at any magazine, look at any time you open up it's always about those 3 things all the time. And
mhm,
so I tell the leaders, like, you have a responsibility to pitch your local news station and tell a story so that the news article isn't just the political garbage and whatever you're seeing, but maybe there's someone who's
right.
thoughtful like you who has something really intellectually stimulating to share.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
so and it
take
was always
control of your narrative. Yeah.
exactly, like, you be part of creating that. So, anyways, just some ideas there. So, let's go into something interesting that I saw here, one of the excerpts in the book, which I found interesting. One of the questions you write here, what stops us from evolving? And you share a lot of different things here, but I just wanted to start with that one question, from your perspective, what stops leaders from this ever evolving cycle of getting better?
Yeah. I think a lot of times there's those missed opportunities. I've shared a little bit of my leadership experience, and I think that's enough there. there's also the fear, you know? What's interesting, like the more you learn and that kind of thing, and this is also a reason that one of four principals don't have a coach or a mentor, because districts, they push this lie that you have a master's, you have a PhD, EDD, or whatever. Like, don't you know it all already? You don't
Oh
need
my
any more
god, yes.
support.
Yes.
And how bizarre. What
Oh
a
my
weird idea. Like, you figured it all out, now just go and do that. And you think about too, like your this is generalization, but where does the teacher focus? You have the kids who are high performing, so it's like, okay, give them a little extra something to do. You have the kids in the middle, and they're super loyal, but they're not going to cause problems. And so they're just kind of like buzzing along. And then you focus on sort of like, issues, right? Like kids that need more attention, for whatever reason. And I think districts do the same thing to school leaders. So as a result, they miss out on a massive opportunity of taking that big middle chunk that is ripe for being excellent, right? And doing things with excellence, which is your thing, or taking those amazing leaders and putting them up even more. And so I think it's also, just districts like just missing the opportunity. And maybe it's a bandwidth thing, but then how do you partner with great organizations like us so that we can
god.
support those leaders that are being missed? So those are some of the things, for me in terms of evolving. But yeah, a lot of it is that sort of that fear and then just blind spots too, right? Like people don't
Yeah.
know. If everybody in the district doesn't have a coach or a mentor and, just doing the same thing and that kind of deal, like what's the real catalyst for you to want to grow, you know? So part of
Yeah,
that's
and
like popping the bubble.
I think that's where the growth mindset comes in, right? Where so many of the people that are making the decisions are very stagnant and like, well, you got your master's when you were 20, so you're 40, so you should know everything by now, right? Where when really it's like, no, we're just getting started, and there's
Yeah.
so much to learn and refine in our skill set and really training to be a school leader is very much like training as an athlete. Like the greatest athletes don't just train once, they train every single day for hours every single day. And
With
and learn
coaches.
with coaches, right? They have physical coaches, they have mental game coaches, they have health coaches, they have doctors, they have all like Olympians, they have all of these different people who are so laser focused on every single part of their development so they can score the goal, so that they can make the race, so that they can do all those things, right? Because the stakes are so high.
Mm,
And again, this goes back to the conversation just a few minutes ago of changing the narrative. If the stakes are so high in education, also, how are we training the leaders who are in charge and responsible for the creation of the next generation of leaders? These 2 year olds are going to be running an office one day. They're going to take the seats in Congress and Senate. They're going to be the leaders that make the policy and the change makers. What kind of minds are we developing? Is it one sided? Are we helping them develop perspective taking, ambiguity, sitting in comfortability, understanding how to have a dialogue with someone who has a different belief system, a different point of view, and not attacking them immediately? Respectfully having dialogue. How do we raise children like that? Well, the leaders have to be like that. They need to
mm.
be the ones that set that tone. So, again, I'm preaching to the choir here, and that's why I love talking to you because I'm so passionate about these conversations and really educating our leaders and understanding why this is so critical and why it's so important. So, I have a couple more questions here for you. So, one of the things you write here, the 3 lines that explain it all, and I loved it. I saw it. I was like, boom, this is awesome. So, you write inauthenticity to authenticity, isolation to belonging, and then missed opportunity to a challenge. Tell me about this.
So when I was drafting the book, the first draft had really great ideas, but it
Mhm.
was very poorly organized. And my editor said
Most authors will
basically,
say that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
editor basically said the organization sucks, Danny. Like you need to work on this. And so honestly, this was an imposter syndrome moment
Mm,
because my first book I hired a book designer to package it and to make it feel and look and experience, like a book. The
sure.
editor took all my crazy ideas and put it together for me, right? So
Mm,
now that was my job. The editor is telling me, I said, no, this is yours. No, it's my job. So I tell this story because it's really important. It's a great leadership lesson in the sense that most leaders keep pushing through, right? They hit a challenge and they add more hours, they skip meals, they stop exercising. It's like work, 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 which is a terrible idea. So in order to write a better book, I stopped writing a book. I got into nature. And I thought about, why does the mastermind structure just really work? And so those three lines that explain it all, half of those ideas became the framework and then the organization for the book, and why it now, is organized well, I would say. But I call this the ABCs of powerful professional development. And in my view, when you integrate more authenticity, more belonging, and more challenge into a PD experience, it leads to life and leadership transformation, right? And that's what you get, right? That's basically three quarters of the book. How do you do that? How do you add authenticity? How do you add belonging? How do you support more challenge so that you see transformation within your culture? And the cool thing about that is, not only can leaders do that for their staff, teachers could do it for their students, but then it becomes a lens that I think they should evaluate potential PD opportunities and say, whoa, wait a minute, where are the ABCs in this experience? And if it doesn't exist, is this really what's right for me?
There's so much in what you just shared here. Let me think what I want to unpack here. So, I think one of the things that you shared, you said in order for me to write a book, I had to stop writing a book and go into nature.
Right. Yep.
So, I want to take that down a little rabbit hole here for a minute
Sure. Sure.
because for the leaders that are listening, and I know, so much of the audience is that we are so committed to excellence. And so a lot of that comes from, pushing through, staying those longer hours, being the person that's maybe opening and closing, being the person that's having every single one-on-one and difficult conversation with all the staff because you're the driver of so much that's going on. And you might not have a fully staffed team that can, support you in kind of all the deliverables. But then one of the things that you shared is like, and then you have to stop, just literally stop, go into nature, get into that pool, go on the run, get those sneakers on because that's what creates the beauty for what's on this side. So, can you share even, and again, whatever you're comfortable sharing, because I know so many times when I go into nature and I really empty my brain and allow the beauty to come inside, I have so many amazing magical moments. Can you share
Mm.
one with us that when you stopped writing the book and really went into your own space, tell me something that came out of that? Because I think so many times leaders are like, nah, it's not going to work for me. It's all whatever. Like, I just need to power through.
Sure. Well, I mean, honestly, that's how I got the idea for the BLBS podcast, right?
Okay.
And then the mastermind. These are all things when I was disconnected from work that the idea
Wow.
came to me.
Okay.
And then same thing now that we're talking about the book. My editor was right. It was poorly organized. I
Sure.
threw out over 54,000 words, right? Like
Woo.
they'll never see the light of day. That's a book in itself. The amount of
Wow.
text that I've
Sure.
discarded, you see?
Wow. Wow.
So the thing about leadership or creating content, it's of service to others. And so I really had to think deeply like, okay, this is really important. This is your moment. And how can you communicate this structure that really could have a ripple effect through the industry? Like you have to nail this. So what is the structure? And I just started thinking about a lot of books, that I enjoy reading myself. One that we read in the mastermind recently is Kim Scott's Radical Candor. Well, there's a framework there, right? There's an X and Y
Sure.
axis, and one of them is caring personally, and then the other part is challenging directly, and
Mhm.
that's her continuum. And when you
Mhm.
do that, you're in radical candor, and your feedback lands better. You have more productive conversations, and
Sure.
that guides, the whole text, and it helps people talk about the work too.
Mhm.
So to me, you may see the puppy. She's laying down. I don't know if you can see it
I
as
didn't
the
see
video.
that
Poor Elva, she's sleeping. But
yet.
anyways, I grabbed my puppy. We're out in Berry Park, which is 5 minutes from my house, and just started thinking, right? Like, what's the framework? And then also too, from like, leaders, you have to get great at storytelling, and thinking in imagery and metaphors and this kind of stuff. And so I hope this works, but it was very intentional. Okay, I serve school leaders, they were classroom teachers, we're all in the field of education. ABCs 1, 2, 3, like that's the foundation. So
Sure.
can I come up with a framework that's also like very relevant to our industry? And that's why I named it the ABCs of powerful professional development. We'll see if it works. Time will tell. But I had fun with it. I'll tell you that much.
I think it's scary sometimes to pause, to slow down, to invest in ourselves. When we invest in a mastermind, when we invest in a coach,
Yeah.
we're really betting on ourselves. It's very much like
Mm.
going into the casino sometimes and like, "Ooh, am I gonna win? Am I not?" And I think the mindset of going into a mastermind is knowing that I think there's a lot of faith that comes into it, like that leap of faith of like,
Yeah.
I'm making the investment. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be on the calls. I'm going to do the homework. I'm going to do the exercises, make friendship. I'm going to, build relationships. And then what's supposed to happen will happen. The chips will fall where they need to if I'm doing what I need to do. I find that when we get so obsessed with the outcome goal, the mastermind doesn't do its job because you're
Mhm.
too focused on this is the result that I need. And
Mhm.
masterminds don't work like that. If this is the result you need, go buy that specific training or go get that widget or whatever it is, right? The mastermind is such a different concept. So I'd love to kind of close up by you sharing like how you see mastermind so differently from traditional professional development or a conference or just buying a product or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the metaphor of betting on yourself,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I'll talk about like work that needs to get done in order to keep your job and then work that really creates massive value in your organization, right? You think
Boom.
about poker since we're talking about betting, right? When
Yeah.
you're sitting there by the dealer, you have to match that bid, and then the same thing goes around the table, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you're going to win the hand. It just means you
Right.
get to play the round, right? So being in a mastermind is like not only matching the bid and playing the round, but it's also adding the strategy of, when to hold them, when to fold them, the song, right? And how to win that game. And so that's awesome. And inputs versus outputs, we could do a whole 10-hour seminar
Go
on
back and
that.
forth with all
Yeah,
those
that
things.
is so good. That's like a very brilliant point. So I hope your
Yeah.
audience wrote that down.
Yeah.
And you should bet on yourself because guess what? At the end of the day, that's really all you control. And so, why is bet? If all you can control is yourself, and of course, there's outcomes that you want to orchestrate and be intentional about. But at the end of the day, it's how you show up. It's your presence, it's your energy, it's your work ethic, all that kind of stuff. Last thing, because your question was like masterminds, how's it different than traditional PD? For us, in addition to the ABCs, it's very fluid. It's very member driven. You go to
Yeah.
a conference, you go to a book or whatever, you're sort of being talked to, or you know why you're there and you know what you hope to get. With the mastermind, there is some consistency in the structure. You build relationships with the people, but it's magic. I mean, every meeting is different, right?
Yes. Yes.
And just one real quick story like Nick, who's a principal in Delaware, he told me he had to, like, for him, the financial investment was not an obstacle. Okay. He actually was worried about the time investment. Could I block out at least an hour for the meeting each week? Because he's a busy guy, father, whatever, all these responsibilities. But what he told me is that the hour he spends in the community saves him hours on the back end because of the high level discussions, the resources we share, the shift from reactive to proactive leadership. Like, oh, wait, you're dealing with that in your school? I had no idea that existed. And now I'm prepared. And there's not a day that goes by when he has a conversation. He's like, we talked about that in the mastermind.
Yes.
So it's personalized, it's relevant, it's powerful.
I think one last thing, and then I want you to tell people where people can go to find out more information and get the book and all the things.
Sure.
When we talk about betting on ourselves, and people have all kinds of hangups like money, time, life, kids, all the things that everyone has to deal with. I always ask people, and I ask myself the same questions. Like, I joined a specific female businesswoman's mastermind
Yeah.
recently, and there was a lot of requirements to be part of it. And it was for female with a specific revenue number, and you had to be a mom as well because so much of the conversation is driven around that.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, should I join? Should I this? Should I that? And I think of betting on myself. I think if I don't believe that I deserve to bet on myself, why should
Mm.
anyone believe in me? Why should anyone
Yeah.
trust me? And so, for the school leader that's listening, why should any parent trust you with their child if you can't believe that you deserve to invest in yourself and that you
Mhm.
deserve to constantly pour into yourself as well? And what you learned when you were in high school and in college ain't going to cut it in this day and age. So just believe that you deserve that, believe that you're enough, believe that who you are right now is enough and you want to get better. And I just think listening to these conversations, just what Danny and I are doing right now, and listening to Danny's podcast, which we'll talk about, those enrich your heart and mind like you can't imagine, right? It's those moments where crisis hits and you're like, I heard that on the podcast. I heard that in the mastermind. Read that in his book. I read that here. That's what makes those moments so much easier to navigate and create magical moments as well. So, Danny, tell us where people can find your book, where people can find your podcast, and just more about you
Mhm.
for people that want some more Danny goodness.
Thank you. The
Yeah.
book's available everywhere you get a book. If you go to the Corwin website and
Okay.
use the code Ruckus, right, then you could get 20% off free shipping.
We'll
If
have
you
all
go
the
to
links
my
in the show notes as well for everyone who's listening. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And if you go to my website, betterleadersbetterschools.com/mastermind book, all one word, there's a
Mhm.
whole bunch of bonuses. Like some of those 57,000 words I cut, there's 5 excerpts, right, that I
Ooh,
release. There's a simple opening activities checklist. There's a curated leadership reading list, right, from all the books we read since 2016 in the Mastermind, and
nice.
linked up annotated bibliography. So you get that, you get autographed copies. There's all sorts of cool stuff that's only available on the website. So that's where I would point people toward.
Awesome. And then we'll also have the link to Danny's podcast, Better Leaders, Better Schools, which is a great show. I listened to it myself. He's got some great insight and he interviews some really exceptional people. So definitely check that
Like
out as
you.
well. Yeah. Danny, thank you so much for joining me here on Schools of Excellence. I want to close with, what is your definition of excellence?
Wow, that is a powerful question, honey. And thank you for having me. Like, what an honor to join you on your show. Definition of excellence would be that you are living in alignment with who you are, who you've been created to be, your personal core values, and you're consistent, that you do what you say you're going to do. It seems like a common sense sort of thing to share, but it's not common practice, right? And that's why many people don't have trust in their leaders. But if you're living in alignment and people can sense that, they could feel it, and you do what you're going to say you can do, I mean, there's nothing you can't achieve.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
If you are loving the Schools of Excellence podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your school, I would love if you can do two things for me. One, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And two, can you please leave us a review? Reviews help other school leaders know that this is the place to learn how to build a school of excellence. And I would be so grateful if you can do that for us. Your help and support makes this show to be able to be listened by the thousands of other school leaders all around the world. Thanks so much for listening, for giving us your time and attention each and every week, and I appreciate that you have joined us. If your accountant has ever told you to cut back on professional development or slash your teacher appreciation budget or your staff development budget just so you could stay afloat, or has told you, hey, you probably can't go invest in that program, please listen. The problem is not that you're spending too much money on your people or yourself or your investment or your support system. It's that your school has invisible money leaks that are draining your profit, leaks that no spreadsheet will ever catch or accountant. So I created the 6 money leaks of schools that show you the 6 core areas that schools lose money every single month without realizing it. If you close even one of them, your profits will start to soar without sacrificing your team. Go get it now and stop blaming the things that are actually building your school.